Hey guys, welcome to the panel. I guess we should just get started because we have a lot to talk about. First, I'd like to welcome to the stage Blackish and Grownish costume designer Michelle Arcole. And, of course, the star of Grownish, Yara Shahidi.
So before we get started, this person that we get to sandwich, Miss Michelle Cole, had a birthday 2 days ago. I was wondering if we could celebrate. So this is for you. You don't have to open it now, but at the very least, I think a happy birthday is in order, right? Aww. Yeah. Am I gonna start it?
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder, yes.
Is he here? The other one.
Birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday.
Okay.
Well, what a great note to start on. Yes. Actually, it's funny because my first question was for you, Michelle. I remember reading in your bio, it says that you fell in love with costuming at the age of 15 after seeing My Fair Lady. I'm curious, what was it about that experience that so moved you and inspired you?
Oh, God, I don't know if anybody has seen My Fair Lady, but yes. I mean, the costumes were incredible. And the white hat when she's at the horse race, and she wears the white hat, and I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a costume designer. And so, and my dad, we went through it. So we started out with going to sewing classes, art classes, and then I would head over to college in Kentucky. So.
Well, that's my next question, because I think costume design, when you think about that, it's, for me at least, I don't know how one would get into doing that. I mean, can you sort of walk us through sort of the steps you took to get to this place where you've been nominated for several Emmys, so your work is critically acclaimed?
What did you say? Light work. Walking you through my career, I started, again, when I got out of college, I started as a set person over at Young and the Restless. Does anybody know Young and the Restless? And I thought at 21 I had made it. I mean, David Hasselhoff, I was like, that is the best thing ever. And so from there, I started in the stock room, and you have to be willing to work free. And that's what I think most of you probably don't, a lot of people don't understand, is that when you are really wanting a job, you have to kind of offer your services, work free, be an intern, do whatever it takes to get your foot in the door. You don't know what one opportunity might lead to another, so I think it's really important that you keep pushing and keep doing it. And I started in the stock room just doing clothing and just hanging everything up and washing clothes. That was my first year on Young and the Restless. And then from there, they put me on the set. Then I learned how to do set. And then I learned how to be a supervisor, and my career kept going. But but to keep moving in this career and to keep doing it, you have to really work hard, and you have to do a lot of long hours, and you have to really want it. You have to love this, and I love this job. I have an amazing boss. I love this job, and I have great actors, and it's so much fun, but it is a day-to-day job, and you have to really, and she inspires me when I go to work, too. I mean, just the fact that she goes to Harvard, she comes to work, she studies, and it's just like, if she can do it, I can do it, right? And I was like...
Well, I remember there was a point in which you had, was it 3 or 4 shows running simultaneously?
Last year.
So last year it'd be like Blackish is a couple yards away from the Grownish set. So you have Blackish running, you have Grownish running, you have 2 other projects running, and I have no clue how you did it, because in one Grownish episode, I remember our first episode back in season 1 and in season 2 both had like 16 changes for me.
First. That was the first change, yeah.
And we have 11 characters.
And now we have more. Well, this past season we had a lot more characters, yes. But it is, when we first started doing Grownish, we had the concept and we talked about it. And I'm just like so thrilled that Grownish really took off. I mean, the clothes, the hair, the makeup, and your team. I mean, you guys are nodding your head. It was phenomenal. And we really didn't know what we were like kind of creating. And we were just being us. And so it just burst out the door. And I'm just so proud of her. And but it was just great an experience to see Kenya Barris, our creator of the show, and he had his hand all over it and talking to her, talking to me, and he stayed on top of it. He had a vision for this show, and he got it. And it was a lot of hard work, and we did it. And so I'm really proud of it.
I mean, you guys have worked together for 6 years now, starting with Blackish. I'm curious, can you tell us I guess, do you guys remember the first time you met?
I remember. Yeah, of
Yes.
course. Because I really feel like our first fitting together is what made Blackish a real thing. You know, I think before that, it was the producer session and auditions and such. But like the first thing you do before you step foot on a set is you figure out who your character is. And I remember we had like a 3-hour fitting.
We did.
I'd come straight from school, so I was in my proper Catholic school uniform, knee-high socks, plaid skirt.
And our books.
Yes. But I remember that first moment of having so much fun because I didn't even know what playing Zoe was going to allow me to do. And you already had a really clear vision for everything that we could do to explore her character. And I'm grateful because I know I've said it before, but I mean, Zoe is that kind of teenage daughter that's sometimes in the periphery, sometimes floating in the family. And I feel like the fashion sense that you established from the pilot is what gave her a direction that we didn't even realize was going to flourish into an entire storyline and character trait in and of itself. It wasn't that we walked in being like the fashion major, Zoe Johnson, at the age of 13.
No.
It was very much that it became such a part of who she is that it became something where it's like, well, of course, when she goes to college, this is what she's pursuing.
And I think when you first came in for your fitting, I remember we had all these clothes, and she was just grinning and just, and they went shopping that night to buy all the clothes, right, or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely had picked a few items, and then I was like, duly noted. So there were a couple times where Zoe's outfit was the same outfit I had just changed out of because I had purchased it before.
Right. And actors do that a lot. If they like their clothes, they go out and buy it. But it was she was 13, and we had great fun doing that fitting. Yeah, but I know you probably noticed from where she has been, from Blackish to Grownish, where she wore a lot of her blouses, and there were a little bit clothes and the vest and everything. She had these pretty little Ted Baker skirts and things like that. But then we went zooming into Grownish, where it was like Valentino. I mean, we were off the Stella McCarthy. We were off the chain, and so it was a new Zoe, right? But when she did Blackish, I think we made a really big difference in doing the two shows, and I think we really defined her character.
I'm curious, I mean, what is your working relationship like? I mean, how collaborative is it? I'm curious, because I think, again, we're with a lot of students. I'm sure they're curious to know, how does one work with a costume designer to create a character?
I feel like we're really collaborative. It helps that, I mean, starting from that first moment that you had a vision, and I think we were talking about this before, but it's really collaborative across every department.
Yeah.
And so to get one Zoe look requires so much work because it's not just, let's put her in this because it's cute. It's like, what's the context of the storyline? What's happening? All of that's being considered. So you read the scripts before I even get a hold of them to just break down what every scene is like. And then you have your meetings with other department heads. So we're already thinking about hair for it. I mean, is it going to be a look where you know that she's going to wrap her hair at night and she's not changing looks every day? Is it going to be a part of the story in terms of, is she doing something that's a little more work-oriented, or is she having fun? And then there's just my personal kind of preferences, too, of, I mean, the amount of times you'll read a script where it's like, Zoe in a leotard. Like, what Yara's not about to do is that. Because she knows me so well. I'm like, if it surpasses my fingertips, that's not being put on my body. But I love that because, I mean, the amount of moments where we've had to figure out, well, then, how do we show that Zoe's growing up? How are those creative ways where we can demonstrate that she is getting older when there's certain things that just make Yara comfortable? And so every process is really collaborative. And I feel like a lot of it's just, I mean, I come in and there's already such a vision that I feel like my role is more so just those random thoughts of like, oh, I heard Zoe's kind of like, this is a part of this story arc for Zoe. So I wonder, do we do this or that? Or, oh, we love this one outfit that we tried on. Well, that's perfect because in this scene we're doing X, Y, or Z. But I mean, I don't have to do much because I already love most everything.
And also, when we're doing this, when we get the script, we have the production designer. So before the time that she gets there, everything, I've talked about the set colors, we talked about the lighting. There's times that she was, I don't know if you remember, when she was you were in the sequence dress, and we had a certain light on you when you were in the bubble, the glass.
Yeah, I mean, even the basic things of like, do the outfit strobe on camera? We wear so many patterns, and it's such a colorful show that there's so many technical things that you have to think about before you even get to then the creative side of it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work before she even gets into the wardrobe. We take things out to show it to the camera to see if it's going to strobe before she tries it on. So
and I come in like, is it comfortable?
Yeah, no.
Like, I feel like that's my only question.
No, that in the pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
oh,
that sound
and then the
pack.
other thing is, I mean, many people don't know, but you wear a sound pack under everything, and those can be hot and uncomfortable, and they have to be in a certain position. Yeah. So I feel like my one question is always like, where are we going to mic this?
She does. Every
like, it's the only thing I really
thing.
ask.
And Michelle, you mentioned how Kenya Barris has had such a vision for Grownish, which means the same thing for Blackish. So can you talk a bit about what it's like to then work with a showrunner to develop the character styles?
Oh, Kenya is very, 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 very involved. You show him boards, you show him pictures. You have to. Sometimes you go to his office several times, and then he'll say, "Don't like it," and then you go back and you have to try again. But most of the time, he really does. He does get it. He loves clothes. If anybody knows Kenya, he loves clothes. So he'll tell you where to get your Nikes. He'll tell you where to get your shoes, because he's that kind of. He keeps up on music. He keeps up on everything. I don't know how he does it. Do you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think my favorite Kenya moment was on set. This must have been season 1 of Blackish. He yelled cut because Bo's diamond earrings were too small. But he had the most like eloquent explanation as to why that mattered, and it's really funny to I think, and really impactful to be with a creator of the show who understands how important every department is. It's not just a mere like, here's the writing, go execute, but he really does. I feel like his involvedness, or how involved he is really indicative of how much he appreciates what every single department can bring to a show. And so I even remember from the first moment we did promo shoots for Zoe, and being like, my hair mattered. And it was like one of the first times and one of the only times you see Zoe with straight hair, and it was a very intentional decision afterwards to be like, well, let's figure out how to incorporate more curls, because that was important to all of us, to be like, well, how do we want to present this young girl, and how do we want to play with her hair, and how do we want to have fun?
And makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot. So he's very, very, very involved in both shows. And he will challenge you. And he's not a person that takes no for an answer. So you got to keep going. So, but he's great to work for. He's a wonderful boss.
And he trusts that he has great people doing great jobs.
Yeah.
And Yara, at this point, for you as an actor, how important is costuming for you? Does that help you find the character, or I'm curious?
Most definitely. I mean, I said it before, but I really do feel like what we established on Blackish is what has allowed for Grownish to be a spin-off, or even a possibility. Yeah. Because when you think about it, and for me as an actor, Grownish was the first time we really got to establish who Zoe was.
Yeah.
Other than being the older sister, and we had some really gratifying moments throughout Blackish in which we saw her grow, we saw her get into college, we saw her be a good older sister, and those moments were really important. But at the same time, we realized when we got to Grownish, we really haven't seen her in any other context. We really haven't seen her in this self-motivated space of, I'm getting up and going about my day. What am I going to do with my day? And who is she in this new circumstance when it's not in the Johnson family? But I think the reason that we could even get her to college is because there was this unspoken storyline of her wardrobe. There's this unspoken storyline that was seeded in Blackish of, like, the only reason that there was a storyline about her having a Teen Vogue internship is because we had already from day one made her a fashionable person. And I think the intention that you put in her outfits that made it more than just like, oh, she's wearing pretty clothes, but she was making intentional choices, made it something, it made it go from just a fun thing that a character does of like, oh, she has a great wardrobe, to being an active character trait. And I feel like that defined Zoe and continues to define Zoe, because we're now on her junior year and she's a stylist. And that wasn't something we came in to this show thinking about. That wasn't something that was pre-planned, but it was absolutely developed. And I also think just between Yara and Zoe, I feel the distinction between what Yara wears and what Zoe wears. And it's helpful because you go about a 16-hour day, and quite honestly, it's wearing those heels or whatever dress she's wearing that makes me feel like I'm in this moment, because it makes you think about, well, what did she do to get ready today? And going through that process does help with that transition.
We have such a great time dressing her.
We have
see that?
such
I
a
mean,
fun
like, come
time.
on. I mean, and for her to define her character, that this is an actress that really thinks about her character, which is very helpful to a costume designer. Is when an actress knows what direction they're going into, and it really helps us when we figure that out. But she figured it out because she's the producer of the show, so she knows the direction it's going.
I'm curious, Yara, has any part of Zoe's style sort of seeped into your own real life?
Absolutely. Well, as I said before, I went to our first fitting in a Catholic school uniform and walked out a new person. I mean to say, I've always had fun with fashion, and I'm really grateful to be in a household where, I shopped in the boys section literally most of my life.
She likes sweats.
Every major event up to the age of 13, I was in a suit, and I stand
respect
by it. And then there was a phase where I refused to wear jeans, but only wore high tops and skirts. And so I say, like, I've had a very full fashion life of being able to feel like that was something that helped define who I was from a young age. Fun fact, my brother was like the only kid in his school that signed a waiver to get out of his dress code. And so like fashion's always been important to our family, but I think taking that next step as a young adult and moving into this world in which we got to just see the fun of what fashion has to offer, it was really important. Also, just at the age that I was at, being at 13, in which, subconsciously or consciously, there were those moments and messages in which it was like, I wanted that dress because everyone else had it. And it wasn't something that really felt like it captured who I was, but I was a kid in middle school. And so that's kind of what I was going through. And I feel like Zoe showed me what fashion freedom looks like and what it means to have so much fun. And so I feel like what Zoe has taught me, even when our styles aren't parallel, is what it means to have a decision and like have an opinion and have that translate into everything you do. And I feel like fashion, through what we've done on Blackish, has really become a tool for me to take up space. Everything from me wearing a colorful tracksuit may sound just like, oh, Yara likes monochrome, but it physically just helps me take up my space, and it helps me just commit to who I am sometimes. Like, you know who you are? Just go. But I think it does that for so many people. I feel the difference between when I am put in something that I'm uncomfortable in versus when I feel like I have full ownership of myself in the morning.
And Michelle, I know when you guys started on Grownish, you really took a really detailed look at each character, establishing what the type of thing that this person would wear.
You should see her boards.
Well, I was curious. I mean, if there's if you could sort of just walk us through like that first season, like the sort of palettes and sort of styles you put together for each character and the rules you set for each of them.
Well, we did our boards, and so I'm known for my boards. Everybody talks about my boards. They are pretty beautiful, and I really think, they are.
Own it.
I had somebody call me today about my boards. Stanley did. But I really think about it, like I really sit down, and one of my friends is here, and she was living with me for a week, a couple years, and she's like, you and those boards. Again, but I really take it seriously because I'm really thinking about her character, each and every person, of like and I'm a detailed person. I drive my crew, God bless them, nuts. When we did the homecoming, the opening show for that, I couldn't find the large lapels large enough, so I had them made. And we had everything made for the homecoming, our opening show. So I'm very detailed, even from her earrings to the shoes to maybe the bow or anything, and that drives everybody else a little nuts. But we did have where am I going? What am I doing? Where am I going with this? But I just stopped. But my boards again. But the boards again. Let's get back to the boards. But it is going through the tear sheets. We go through everything, and we take pictures of people. We do a lot of work. So it takes about a week to go through about 13 characters, like maybe 10 days. And it's pretty intense for me. So I'm getting ready to do a pilot right now, and it's taken me about 5 days to do.
I mean, you're currently costuming for college students, I guess. And I guess how much do you take into account, like whether or not this person can afford this item, and do you then sort of find a less expensive version of what you're looking for? I'm curious how you find that balance.
I don't find the. Zoe doesn't wear. No, I'm not to get anything wrong here. It's this past season. I figured she's a junior this year, so I really wanted her to step up her game. And we went shopping with my assistants, and I tell you, the clothes that we got this year for her was just off the charts. I felt she looked beautiful in every scene, and that the whole cast looked amazing this year. And so I'm really proud of this year, but I said, step it up, and they're like, oh my God. But we found all of her clothes really at a reasonable price because a lot of it was on sale because it was summertime. So we do our show back in July or August. So everything is on its third markdown, where it was like $1,800. Now it's maybe $400 or $500, But we were really lucky this year.
What I
And
meant,
then it's
I
important.
know. I get it.
what I meant for like a character like
Zoe,
Aaron.
Zoe got close.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the one thing that being a daughter of Andre Johnson
Yes.
granted us.
Yes.
I was like,
And
you think my clothes are expensive? You should look at Anthony. But also, I mean, just
Yeah.
fun fact, the studio has an entire second job. Our clothes don't then go into the ethos. The studio then rents them. And so the reason that you can even get these budgets is because that stays within the ABC studio
Yes,
family
it
for
does.
commercials, other shows, every other thing.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it's worth the investment for them because not only does it enhance the show in that initial moment, but there's an entire second kind of income from just the renting of our clothes.
It's like Scandal, when Scandal went down last year. It all goes into a storage. We rent shoes that Carrie has worn, and we have so all of her beautiful shoes, we get a lot of the beautiful shoes there. So
Right.
that's what happens.
So it works within a larger ecosystem.
Well, I was asking for like a character like Aaron, who doesn't come from as wealthy a background as Zoe, sort of I guess like using costume to indicate that, and so the choices, I guess the clothes that you put him in, and how you figure out what to do with a character like him. I
There's
guess.
a little bit of money. We don't know where it comes from. Yes.
Although you do see him in his Crocs. That's
Yes.
such a
Oh,
Trevor
yes.
thing. I think that's
Yes.
my favorite moment. I remember that moment where he walked on the set with Crocs and I realized that this was as Aaron and not as Trevor.
Yes.
I was like, but I think every person helps inform their character.
Yeah,
And
they
like in
do.
terms of a lot of the brands that we wear don't even cross over just because there's such distinct senses of style.
Correct.
And then I think even the elements of, I remember when Luca walked in and I told you right before, I was like, Luca's gonna wanna go shop with you. Because all I had heard about this one mysterious, very cool person
Luca.
was that, you know, he has a fashion opinion. He comes from, if you ask him about, he's not only great at wearing clothes, his fashion knowledge is so
Off the
immense.
chart.
Many people don't realize he literally can be like, oh, that's archive this or that. That comes from this designer.
Yeah, he does.
Oh,
he
that's,
knows everything.
I mean, he went to, I think he got into one of the, like, fashion schools in Sweden, went and then realized he knew everything. I think that's the Luca Sabat origin story.
That is,
But
that is so Luca. That is
yeah,
so
but I
him.
say that to say I knew when he came to set, like, oh, he's gonna want to go shop with you. But it was really interesting because a lot of what he wore on the show was vintage, or
Yeah.
even I feel like the great gift that you taught me was just even resale too.
Yeah.
So many of the
We do
pieces,
a lot of
especially when it's
resale.
those really high-end designers, are those resale gems that you find.
I don't know if you have it in Atlanta, but in LA we have a lot of resale where you can get these beautiful. We get a lot of her clothes as well as bows, beautiful clothes, and it's maybe 150 where it was like maybe 1,500. You know, so we have some really beautiful clothes in Los Angeles that are resale. So we go there a lot for her and Bo.
So at this point, I think we'll open up to you guys for questions. I think we have mics roaming around the room, and
Oh boy.
You know how heartening it is to see questions right away? There's always that awkward moment in a room where you're just staring at each other.
Oh, my son. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Hi. My name's Anna Lauren Adderley. I'm a film major here at SCAD. I'm from the Bahamas originally. My question for you guys is just, what's your greatest piece of advice throughout your careers? Like, what have you learned the most? Maybe a teachable moment.
What's the greatest? You know what? It is challenging, and you just have to keep your integrity. You have to believe in yourself. I believe you have to follow your dream. And I think when it doesn't make sense to anybody else, you stay on your path because it will make sense to you.
I mean, I think for me, what's been evident in my Blackish and Grownish experience is that you have to surround yourself with great people. And Mommy always says there's nothing more interesting than an interested person. And I think what's true of every single person on that set is not only are they there to master their craft and do their job to the best of their ability, but we're all interested in one another.
That's right.
And it creates such a beautiful work environment. I think so many times there's this idea of competition, and given we live in like a scarcity model setup, especially being creatives, especially being brown creatives. And so it's not that you're going crazy. People have told you to be in competition. But what Grownish has done in particular, we walked into that knowing exactly what energy we wanted that show to be, because and it ended up becoming the best set. The one thing that everyone notes when they all walk on a set is like everyone is so kind.
Yeah.
And those relationships that are formed are why we continue to work with each other on every other project. I feel like we begin to actually form community. It's not about networking, it surpasses that. It's about relationship building.
And you know, and your lead actor, pretty much sets the tone for your show, and so we have her. So I think that's really and they give the best gifts.
Next one.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tari Harrison, and I'm a former student here at SCAD. I study film. I'm currently a podcast producer at iHeart. And I just
Wait, what podcast? I was just listening to iHeart podcasts.
Oh, Tech Stuff and the Restless Ones. Those are my two.
Solid.
Thank you. I want to say that I love you both. I've watched Zoe's character evolve from Blackish and to Grownish, and I really admire that she's like a great example for like young women. And so like my nieces who are like looking at her show, I'm just like, yes, no city girl. Yara, like look at her to divine beauty. It's like, I mean, no offense to city girls, I love their music, but for my nieces, my young nieces, I want them to like inspire to be like Zoe's character and whatnot. I just love how like her characters define classiness, and it's just very elegant. My question to you, Michelle, is what would you say from your total collection of pieces, what would your through line, your story, what does your story say?
Oh, that's a really good question. What does my story say? Oh, can you help me on that one? Yes.
I mean, I feel like whenever I walk into your room, you remind me that television is an art form.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You know?
I mean, it's really hard to explain because I do my job a lot on instincts. I do. I trust my gut and I go with that. And I really love what I do. So I think that that's the thing that probably is the best for me, getting up and going to work and really loving what I do. And I think that's a really big key for me. And I love my actors, and I love my producers and stuff. So I think that's a really part of me. It keeps me going and inspires me to do my best. And I'm pretty hard on myself, so I challenge myself every day too. So I'm pretty hard on myself. I'm a perfectionist at times. I see some heads. Okay, I see the heads.
Hi, my name is Karen Indabisi. I'm a film major as a producer, and I'm a fashion marketing minor. And I love you so much, and I love your work. It's great. But I would just like to ask, working with the two fields that are so strong, how do you juggle being a fashion icon and also a producer of your show?
Thank you. Well, again, I do credit Blackish, and I do credit our relationship with really showing me what fashion can do out in the world. And I think being on Blackish, that's when I really started to explore in my own life of what fashion meant to me. And it still kind of stems from the same place of stemming in joy. You know, I think fashion is such a powerful tool, and at the same time, there's something to be said for never taking yourself too seriously. You know, like I revel in the fact that I'm a young person with plenty of time to try every trend that there is out there. So what do I want to do today that feels different and feels so unabashedly me? But then in terms of the production stuff, I mean, being a producer on the show is fantastic. But I feel like where I really love my space is that we have our own production company, and so we're in the process of developing television, and it's been the most gratifying experience because, again, coming from a family in which this is from every department we've experienced what making television is like, this has been a space that we've talked about for so long, and I think if anything, having those multiple perspectives of appreciating fashion, just having, which is I think a larger conversation about having an aesthetic appreciation and knowing what that can convey. It so is macro more than clothes, but it's an entire storytelling, and I think that's evident when we talk about creating or conceptualizing a show. We're thinking about aesthetics. We're thinking about what an image can tell or convey, and so if anything, I really appreciate being well-versed in both, or at least continuing to learn in both.
And so we have time for one more question, I think.
Oh, it went by fast.
Hi, my name is Alicia. I'm not a SCAD student, but an Atlanta resident. First, thank you, Yara, for just owning your blackness as a young person and just unapologetically being yourself. We don't have a lot of that, and for me growing up, I didn't have that, so for people growing up now that are like in middle school trying to find themselves or something, and like seeing you own who you are is really amazing, so thank you for that. And my question is for Michelle. So I started in a grad program for costume design, and it was not a great situation for my mental health, needed to leave. And I guess I'm feeling now like I have a background in theater, which is like how you started out in school. And then trying to get into TV, it's this like, oh, you're so green, like we can't use you, you don't have experience. So how do you combat like actually having experience, but then someone telling you that you don't? And also like, black don't crack, and I am older than I look, so there's also this like, oh, like you're young and you just finished school. I'm like, no, I have a master's, like I've been out for a little bit. So just kind of combating that and trying to find and own your space in that.
You know what? First of all, I want to really thank you for telling your story. I mean, that was pretty cool that you did that. Don't listen to that person that tells you you can't do it. So let's start there. You can do it. You will do it. And it's just going to take, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. It does take, you have to be patient with it. I remember when I was a young girl, when I was in college, I came home. And I said, Dad, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I don't think I can do this. And I think what's so special about Yara, she has a really amazing family. She has her mom and dad and her brothers and her grandmother. And I had a really great parents too. And I think what happens is my parents encouraged me and kept encouraging me. So I can still, they're gone now, but I can still hear that voice saying, keep going, keep going, keep going. And don't listen to the voices that can't tell you you can't do anything. Because you will and you can, and it will pan out. But you just have to work really hard. You have to kind of figure out what to give somebody. You have to come up like a Madonna, and you have to think of something else, how to get into that door. I have people that come to Blackish. I've had like an average maybe 1 or 2 people that come through every single week. And it's just one of my things I love to do. I love to show them the job. So they come in for about 2 hours and they look at everything. They see the clothes, the cage. I have a cage that's full of clothes. So you get to really see the work, and you get to see how hard it is, see how wonderful it is. But and they come in lifted, and I'm like, go out there and call me in about a year and tell me when you're ready, you know, because they're going to school. So you can do it, but just keep steady, keep praying and pray yourself through it, and you will come through on the other end. Promise. I can promise you that.
Well, we're all out of time. Thank you both for coming here. This is great. Make sure you guys tune into Grownish on Freeform every Thursday. And
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
all.
Thank you.